Illinois just became the latest state to pass comprehensive menopause legislation covering everything from workplace accommodations to insurance coverage. Meanwhile, researchers finally asked midlife women the obvious question: why don't you exercise more? Their answers might surprise you.
Hi there, I'm Tony Lee, and this is Hot Flasher, your daily menopause podcast that serves up fresh news, research, and wellness tips. I've built a daily news pipeline to find the latest on women's health and menopause research. Allow me to introduce my co-host, Nikki, who handles the headlines. Take it away, Nikki.
Thanks, Tony. We've got a good one today. So Illinois just joined the growing list of states taking menopause seriously from a policy standpoint. They passed new legislation that expands both insurance coverage for menopause treatments and workplace protections for women going through this transition. What I find interesting about this is the timing. We're seeing this wave of menopause legislation happening right alongside a cultural shift in how we talk about this stuff. And that's not an accident. The Illinois law specifically requires employers to provide reasonable accommodations for menopause symptoms, think flexible work schedules, access to private spaces, temperature control options. It also mandates that insurance plans cover menopause treatments without those ridiculous prior authorization hoops we've all jumped through. Now, Illinois isn't breaking completely new ground here. We've seen similar laws pass in other states over the past couple of years. But what's notable is how quickly this momentum is building. 5 years ago, workplace menopause accommodations weren't even part of the conversation. Now, we're seeing bipartisan support for these measures. The workplace piece really matters because so many of us are dealing with symptoms during our peak earning years. Hot flashes during important meetings, brain fog when you're trying to close deals, sleep disruption affecting your performance. These aren't just personal inconveniences. They have real professional and economic consequences. Speaking of cultural shifts, the New York Times just published a piece about how television is finally starting to portray menopause more authentically. And honestly, it's about time. For decades, menopause on screen was either completely invisible or played for laughs. You know the trope, the crazy menopausal woman having a meltdown, usually involving throwing things or crying hysterically. Super helpful, right? But now we're seeing shows like And Just Like That, The Morning Show, and Grace and Frankie actually depicting the real experience. Characters dealing with hot flashes, yes, but also navigating the complexity of hormone decisions, relationship changes, career impacts, and identity shifts that come with this life stage. What's different about these newer portrayals is that they're showing menopause as part of a full human experience, not the defining characteristic of a woman gone off the rails. Characters are dealing with symptoms while also being competent professionals, loving partners, complex people with agency. This matters more than you might think, when the only representation we see is either silence or stereotypes. It shapes how we understand our own experiences. It affects how we talk to our doctors, how we explain what we need to our partners and employers, even how we think about what's normal versus what needs attention. The Times piece points out that many of the writers and producers behind these more nuanced portrayals are women who've lived through menopause themselves. Which makes sense. Authenticity tends to come from actual experience, not from someone's idea of what menopause must be like. Now, shifting gears to something that hit close to home for me, new research published in PubMed about exercise habits, preferences, and barriers for midlife women. The researchers actually asked us what stops us from exercising and what would help us exercise more. Revolutionary concept, right? I was curious about this study because exercise recommendations for midlife women often feel like they're written by people who've never been midlife women. Just do 30 minutes of cardio 5 times a week. Okay, sure. Let me fit that in between the hot flashes, the work deadlines, the family responsibilities, and the fact that my body feels completely different than it did 10 years ago. So what did these women actually say? The biggest barriers were time constraints, physical discomfort, and lack of energy. Not exactly shocking, but worth stating clearly. Time constraints weren't just about busy schedules, though that's certainly part of it. Many women talked about the unpredictability of their symptoms, making it hard to commit to regular exercise schedules. When you don't know if you'll wake up feeling rested or exhausted, or if you'll have joint stiffness or energy, planning a 6 a.m. workout becomes complicated. The physical discomfort piece was interesting. Women reported that exercise sometimes made certain menopause symptoms worse, increased hot flashes, joint pain, or feeling overheated more quickly. Some had tried their usual pre-menopause exercise routines and felt discouraged when their bodies responded differently. But what really caught my attention was what they said about motivation and preferences. A lot of women expressed interest in exercise programs specifically designed for their life stage classes that acknowledge the physical and hormonal changes happening. Instructors who understood that some days you feel great and other days everything hurts. The social component came up repeatedly too. Many women wanted to exercise with other women going through similar experiences, not necessarily to complain about symptoms, but to have that implicit understanding that some days you modify, some days you push through, and some days you just show up, and that's enough. What would help more women exercise? Flexible scheduling, education about how exercise affects menopause symptoms both positively and negatively, and programming that adapts to where their bodies are right now, not where they used to be. The researchers also found that women who stayed active during this transition often had to experiment with different types of exercise than they'd done before. Maybe switching from high-impact cardio to strength training and yoga. Maybe shorter, more frequent sessions instead of longer workouts. This connects back to that representation issue I mentioned earlier. When the conversation around midlife women and exercise is all about staying young or fighting aging, it misses the point. Many women aren't trying to turn back the clock, they're trying to feel strong and capable in the bodies they have right now. The study suggests that exercise programs specifically designed for midlife women, with instructors trained to understand hormonal changes and symptom fluctuations, could significantly increase participation rates, which seems obvious when you say it out loud, but apparently needed to be researched and documented. These 3 stories connect in ways that I think are worth paying attention to. We're seeing policy changes, cultural representation, and research approaches that actually take our experiences seriously instead of treating them as problems to be solved or inconveniences to be managed. That feels like progress worth noting.
Thanks for listening to Hot Flasher. We're back tomorrow with more, so don't forget to subscribe. See you tomorrow.